Hi, today we're going to talk about the six-stroke roll. This roll is a little bit elusive and it's usually overlooked by just the casual rudiment learner, but it can bring really huge benefits to your playing, especially if you're a drum set player. You can take this roll and create all kinds of creative drum set fills using this pattern. So today we're going to really focus and dive deep into the six-stroke roll, how to play it, the best ways to practice it, and talk about some of the little lesser known details of how we can phrase it musically as well. Okay, so first, a six-stroke roll has 6 strokes in it. I like to think of it like a 5-stroke roll with 2 accents. So the extra accent creates the 6th stroke. The first accent happens at the beginning of the roll. So it would sound something like this. All right, so if you wanted to subdivide that out, it would look a little like this. So we're just going to write it with straight 16th notes right now. Right, so starts with an accent, ends with an accent, and then these strokes are the double strokes, the rolled, the bounced strokes, however you want to call them. So 2 lefts, 2 rights, and a left. And this would just loop, all right? We can just repeat this. And that is what your 6-stroke roll kind of subdivides out to be, okay? Next, let's talk about the sticking here. This is one of those rolls, there's a few of them that will loop continuously and doesn't technically alternate from hand to hand. So like a 9-stroke roll would have a right hand start, then a left hand start, then right, then left. The 6-stroke roll loops the same sticking over and over again. So if you wanted to, you could start this with the left hand. That's totally a thing you can do, right? And then this is reversed. Everything's opposite. You can do that. Wait, let me try it again. There it is. I think I flipped the sticking and went back to the other one. Especially if you're playing on drum kit, this bottom sticking is something that's probably worth your while to practice. It gives you more flexibility as you move around the drum set. But I gotta tell you, I don't really practice this. That's probably why I made that little mistake. If you're playing rudimental music, snare drum music, this is the sticking that you're gonna see 99.9% of the time. I almost have never seen a 6-stroke roll that starts with the opposite sticking. All right. So, you know, one of my philosophies in practicing and training is the Pareto principle. If you think of that, it's 80% of your positive outcomes come from 20% of something you're doing. So when I look at myself and how I've practiced over the decades now of playing and performing, I look at the time I spent in the practice room. And the longer I've practiced, the more years that I've put into this, the more I realize that, you know, 80% of my development has really come from 20% of the things that I have done. And I think that's very true, and it's true in business. This is a huge principle people use in business and in other aspects of your life. So, you know, this is what you got to know. Just like a 7-stroke roll, it starts on the left. It is part of that tradition of how the music is written and the way the phrasings lie and the way the roll is used when it's composed. So this is the big focus for the sticking. there's also a component of this where swing comes into play. And that happens a lot with rudimental drumming. So just like if you were playing a jazz pattern, let's say your ride cymbal was doing the standard, I don't like this, the standard, you know, dang, dang-a-lang, 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 right? That jazz swing rhythm. If you looked at those notes on the page, though, you wouldn't necessarily be swinging them. You'd be playing it like this. 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1. But if you know the language of jazz, then you know that this is 1, 2, 3, 4, low 1, 2, 3. It is more like that, okay? This happens with this roll as well, okay? So I never even thought about this. I grew up totally surrounded by the rudimental language of drumming. So if you're involved in a language, sometimes you don't even realize you're doing something. You don't even realize you're saying something a certain way with a certain accent or a certain emphasis on a certain word. So I had no idea I was doing it. And I was teaching a class at the University of Tennessee, and it was basically a performance-based class where the students were learning to play drum and fife music. And so we had rope drums set up, and we were going through a rehearsal, and there were 6-stroke rolls. And I was demonstrating how to play a certain section of the piece, and I played something like this, you know. And there were some very good players in the class, and one of them raised their hand and he said, how come you're turning that roll into a triplet when it's 16th note based? Right? It should be played like this. If you were playing it as it was written on the music. And I had to think about it for a while, and I thought, did I turn it into a triplet? I had no idea, because I just was involved in this language and I didn't know anything else. And it really made me think. This is one of those moments where it made me ask, like, why do we do things a certain way? How come I wasn't aware that I was doing this? But what it comes down to is, as the roll is used, it kind of has a triplet feel to it most of the time. There are moments where it can be really rigid and 16th note based. So even though it's written like this, it has sort of a triplet feel to the way we played the roll. And that was like a huge moment for me as a teacher. I started to learn about things I need to introduce when I'm introducing things like this to a student, because I never knew I had to teach it and explain that it's a swung rhythm. So it was important for me, and I want to make sure I share that with you. So here is an exercise that you can use to train your 6-stroke rolls, okay? You can do this at any tempo that's comfortable for you. Okay, so that's the roll, right? That's the feel of the roll. It's gonna look like it's written on 16th notes, the check pattern, but it's gonna have a triplet feel to it, okay? So here's the exercise. You can bump it up, you can play it faster. And as you get faster, the triplet feel becomes more prominent. Okay, so if you wanted to work on your 6-stroke rolls, that exercise, I would just repeat it 10, 15, 20 times per session, per tempo, and then bump up the tempo if you wanted to get faster. A secret to rolling faster, lighten up on your touch a little bit, and that will help get that speed happening a little more. Sometimes we get tight, we get tense, we start digging into the practice pad, and the rolls just lose all of the good sound qualities we have. We want to stay light on top of the surface. Check out my other videos where I talk about exactly how to roll like that. All right, like the first 5 rudiments a drummer should learn. Check that video out, and it'll show you really what I'm talking about in detail. So, the final step, the traditional way to study and train and break these down is to go from a really slow to your most comfortable fast speed without losing sound quality, right? That's sort of my rule of thumb, is if your sound quality starts to go down, if your technique starts to suffer, that's your maximum speed, and you should back off and hold it there, and then we'll slow it back down again. Okay, so here it is. We're going from a super slow to a maximum comfortable speed, and hopefully over time that maximum comfortable speed will get faster as you do the original exercise. Yeah, so the more you do this exercise, the faster you will get at it. And then we're going to slow it back down. And as I speed up, you're going to notice that it starts to morph into more of a triplet feel. And then as I slow down, it starts to morph back to a 16th note feel. So here we go. So now it's more of a triplet feel. Okay, not only does this roll get you to practice going from slow to fast, right, turning single strokes into double strokes, you're also morphing feel, which is just another musical tool in your toolbox. That's very valuable. It's used across all styles of music where you might have to morph something slightly, and having the ability to do that in your hands is just invaluable. So start slow. Build it to your fastest without it sounding bad, without the technique getting tight, without the roll getting crushed, and then just back off slightly, okay? And leave some comments for me. Let me know what you think. Let me know if it helps you. Let me know if you got questions. And let me know if there's anything you want to see in a future video, and I'll try to do that for you, all right? Keep drumming, subscribe so you don't miss anything, and I'll see you in the next video.